Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be working with some of my Your Creative Studio supplies. I've got a basket next to me with all the stuff, and some junk mail. In particular, I guess it's junk from the mail. My husband got a new credit card. It was one from with airline points, and boy, it had all this crazy packaging and stuff. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this part. It's super thick, and I'm sure I can figure out something, but this is like velvety smooth. It's really nice, but that could be hard to glue on, but we'll see how we go here. And I already made, yes, here it is. Forgot where it was. I made a junk journal cover out of this portion of the mail because it had this lovely window here, and so I wanted to keep that. And it was super thick, and I just added cardstock, and I'll be showing that in a different junk mail journal cover video. But today I'm going to use the other supplies. I'm going to set this one aside. This is also part of the outside envelope. It does have that velvety texture, so what I'm going to try to do is cover it with some things. I love the purple though, so maybe I'll, this one doesn't have a whole lot up here, maybe I'll keep most of the purple, I don't know. And then I have this one I'm thinking would be great. It's almost the same size as a traveler's notebook, but I think it's a little bit shorter. It's like 8x4. So, but there were all these, look at all this crazy advertising pieces, and these are like tag weight. So I'm gonna cover them and make them into like tags. Alright, for this first part of this video series, I'm going to work with this piece of junk mail that already has a fold in it, but then I decided to add on to it instead of just making a simple cover. So I've taken some packaging from the Your Creative Studio box supplies, and it kind of looked like that, and I am going to trim it down just slightly, and I have scored it, but I'll show you how I did that in a moment. I'm also going to use for this cover some envelopes from the Your Creative Studio box. I think it might have been one of the most recent ones, but it came with the stationery and these envelopes, and so I'm going to use 2 of those envelopes in this cover today. But that we'll save those envelopes for a little bit later. First, we've got to construct the cover. So taking this piece of junk mail and this piece of packaging, I want to mark where the packaging is a little larger and trim off that excess there. I'm going to use its entire width because I'm just going to score it and fold it, but I need it to match up in height, and so that looks pretty close. Now here I've got some double-sided tape that I'm going to use to help me keep it together and strengthen it. And I was having trouble. I wanted a little tiny gap, so I used a little tiny piece of washi to hold it in place while I get my double stick tape on there. It's a little crooked, but it's okay. It's just meant to hold it together until I can get all the papers around to really bind it in a more strong way. Anyway, so this is the skeletal portion of this junk journal. I'm gonna reinforce this this score line, I can't think of my words right now, that I had made earlier, and make sure everything folds the way I want it to. Now, I'm bringing in some more junky stuff. I thrifted this little pad of paper placemats, $1.99, a long time ago, and I'm still using it. And the great thing about it is it's longer than your average scrapbook paper, so it works great for covering journals without having to match up seams, etc. So again, I'm bringing in some really strong double stick tape, and I like to use a combination of this tacky glue here and the double stick tape, so I went ahead and put a bunch of that on. The most important parts that I like to use the double stick tape for are the edges, and then I fill in with the tacky glue. And I'm just going to remove part of the backer paper so that I can kind of line it up and try to get straight edges. And some of this is not quite in frame because it's so big, but I am going to leave, I think it's roughly 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch on the bottom and the right hand side here that you can see. And the left hand side I left longer because I'm going to cover that small, like that 1/4 inch flap with the placemat paper also. Now here I'm going to gingerly reinforce all the folds fold and burnish all the edges that fold, and it's really great to have a nice thick quality paper so it doesn't crack, but believe me, I have experience in the paper cracking, and if your paper cracks, you can cover it up, or you can embrace the distressed look, which is what I usually do, and maybe I'll even ink up the cracked paper just to emphasize it even more, so it kind of looks intentional. But this time, woohoo, this paper's great. It didn't crack, and sometimes it helps to do that slow folding and just kind of work the paper into the idea of folding over so that it doesn't crack. But man, I've been very careful and still had it crack sometimes. So I don't know what the ultimate secret is there, but that's a good tip, is to just go slowly and fold it and don't be too rough. Maybe because I crack my paper a lot. Maybe it's because I'm too rough a lot of the time, but you know, I do love the distressed look, so I work with it. So here we've got all these edges folded just right there, and then the paper that extends over, I'm gonna fold against the edge here and just kind of encourage it to fold there. And then it did tear there, you can see, but that's okay because you'll see later that's a part that gets trimmed off anyway. So I'm going ahead and folding them over. Now there's some excess on this side, and I don't want to have to mess with that. So I'm going to use my ruler to get that, I think it looks like about 3/4 of an inch or something, and mark it so that I can cut it off straight. I could, if you have a paper trimmer long enough, you could just trim it that way, but this was just easiest for me doing on camera because my paper trimmer is huge. And I'm not even sure that would all fit in there. I think it's longer than the 12 inches, so drawing the line and cutting along it works best for me. Again, I'm getting that fold slowly to work there so it doesn't tear, and these edges are going to fold up, and so that you don't see the end of the paper, they'll be covered up later with paper. And at this point we want to just trim off a little excess, and this is just a very, very scant angle here that I'm doing, just a tiny little V. You can kind of see right around where the seam is, and I didn't even mark it because I was folding it such that I could see the seam, the fold line. You can kind of see there where it's the paper's kind of scored and leaves a mark, so I didn't even need to mark it with a pencil where to cut. And on the corners here, you're going to trim off the whole corner. So the idea is just to fold up and trim off the excess paper, and we want all those edges to fold in so that when we bring in our other paper we can cover it and it looks nice and finished. And so again, trimming off these tiny little V's. Not too much, but not too little, because if I do too much, which I have done before also, then some of the paper doesn't get covered by, you can see some of that junk mail behind. But you can always cover it again later with more things, which is sometimes what you need to do. So here it is, and now it's time to fold all those flaps in. So again, I like to use kind of a combination of double stick tape and some tacky glue adhesive. This is personal preference though. I think you could just do it with wet adhesive, you could just do it with double stick tape, whatever your favorite adhesive is that works well for you, go for it. So here I like the edges that go further in to have the double stick tape, and then I just supplement with the tacky glue. That's what works for me, and I think, yeah, that's what I like to do here. And I'm just gonna speed this up a bit and glue and fold all those edges in so we have a nice finished edge on the outside of the whole journal cover there. And this part where I've sort of Frankenstein combined the two pieces of junk mail is that double stick adhesive, so it's still tacky there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and make sure everything still folds properly because I've added all that paper on there. And again, I need my backer paper because that is still sticky. But it's looking pretty good here, and you can start to see the form of what we're making here. And now I'm thinking about the closure, and oftentimes I get so excited making my cover that I forget, or I don't think about what closure I want until I'm done covering it, and then sometimes it can be hard to hide what you want to do with the closure. And so I wanted to put like a button or something for a closure here, and so I'm doing it before I add that paper back on. And I made a little mark there where I wanted it to be, and I'm erasing the pencil mark because I realized I should probably check to see that it's centered. And in fact, my first mark wasn't exactly centered, so I used my favorite ruler here, this clear Tim Holtz ruler that has a centering feature. And pulling out some embellishments, I'm just checking different brads. So I was thinking button at first or something, but then I thought, oh, a large brad or paper fastener would work really well. And I settle on this dark purple one. I really like how that looks with that other flower, and the contrast. And so I'm going to place this in there, but I'm not pushing it all the way in. I'm leaving a little tiny gap. And I'll show you that here in a moment so you can see what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to use some of the double stick tape to make sure it stays put. Now, unfortunately, later I forget to remove this, so yeah, you'll see how that works out in a bit. But then you can see that there's a little bit of room. It's not all the way up against the paper. So then we can cover all this up, and I can finish the closure later. But it's important to think about the closure before you finish covering your whole cover, because some of the closure ideas, it looks nice to cover up the prongs of that brad, I don't want to see those. So in order to cover them up, I had to do it before I put on this final paper. Again, I'm using the double stick tape and a whole lot of tacky glue, and I'm winging out the backing paper so that I can line it up without fully committing to the placement. For this one, I want to have it all the way up against the seam. I don't want to see a lot of that white junk journal type in that packaging paper, so that's where I was lining it up. And even I tried to center it top and bottom. And that is how it turns out. And then this one, I am using the full sheet because I need that paper reinforcement for that seam that I made where I joined the two pieces of packaging and junk mail. And that's a little trickier. I had folded it, but that fold wasn't precise, so I kind of tried to undo my fold and just glue down the papers and then fold it again. And so I'm going to place all the double stick tape down and all that glue down, and then I kind of forget about my closure there and place it down on top of all that, which was that's a big mistake. But so don't do that if you're making this. See, look, I'm putting it right on top of that other backing paper. Now, because I don't have all the backing paper off, I was able to remove that center backing paper and just kind of lift it and slip it out because it wasn't really stuck on. However, I totally forgot about the backing paper that is on my closure, and it causes a little bit of a problem, but it's nothing too terrible. I notice at this point, as I'm pressing things down, there's a certain puckering happening, and that is because that backing paper is causing it not to adhere. So eventually everything around it will stick well because I had the tacky glue, but I had to really finagle it and work on it. And so it'd be better just to not forget to take that backing paper off. Now here come our envelopes again from the Your Creative Studio, and I'm going to use a little thin piece of double stick tape and some tacky glue to just adhere down the envelope flap. So these are going to be flip out elements, and it's kind of a double tuck spot or pocket, because here you have the envelope where you can tuck something in or place a card in there and it flips out. It's kind of another page too, built into the cover, and I'm showing you here with a little tag, but also the flap. I wanted a little room to tuck something with the flap. And again, this other envelope, and I'm just kind of messing around. I was like, oh wait, I think it looks better up top, balanced. So one's towards the bottom, one's more towards the top. Even though when I finally put a signature in here, you're not necessarily going to notice that, but I kind of like it to look all right even without the signature. And here I am being a goofball again. I'm putting it down without taking the backing paper off. So yeah, I don't know I'm off my game there, but I realized it, and so fix that up. And that again is going to have two spots, a tuck spot with the envelope flap. And I liked doing it this way also because those envelopes are so beautiful. The flap is beautiful, so I didn't want to lose that. when I glued it down. Now we're back to the closure, and I'm going to use an eyelet and just some seam binding to finish off my closure. But here I'm using my ruler to figure out the center again, and I'm going to make a mark so that I can punch a hole right there for my eyelet. And I use my hole punch here, punch a nice hole in my cover there, and then pull out my little embellishment container. I have some larger eyelets here in the top, and this dark green I thought looked really nice. It's like a forest green, so I'm going to put that one in and then use my hole puncher to set it. But I have to change the setting because it was on the setting for the smaller eyelet, so do that first and then set my eyelet here, and I'll show you how it looks. Worked perfectly. Yay! So I have a scrap of hand-dyed seam binding that I pulled out. I dyed this with oxide ink. I think it was spun sugar, and this was just extra that I pulled off. So they're junk, it's extra, you know. And I just slipped it through the eyelet, and then I can wrap it around the cover and around my little fastener, and voila! It is finished. What do you think? Thanks for watching today, and be sure to check out the next video where I have all kinds of journaling cards made from the same junk mail. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye!